Every day, millions of bees leave their hive and disappear into the world. They search for food, defend their home, raise the next generation, and somehow keep an entire society running. At first glance, it looks like chaos. Thousands of insects moving in every direction. But look closer. Inside a beehive, there are workers, soldiers, nurses, builders, and even scouts. There are rules. There is communication. There is cooperation. And perhaps most surprisingly of all, there is something that looks remarkably similar to democracy. All of this is happening inside creatures with brains smaller than a grain of rice. So how did bees become one of the most successful societies on Earth? A beehive isn't just a nest. It's a living city. A healthy honeybee colony can contain tens of thousands of individuals, each performing a specific role that helps the entire community survive. At the center of the colony is the queen. Many people imagine the queen as a ruler giving orders to her subjects, but that's not really how a hive works. The queen's primary job is reproduction. At peak season, she can lay up to 2,000 eggs in a single day. Surrounding her are thousands of worker bees. Despite the name, these workers do far more than gather nectar. Some clean the hive, some feed developing larvae, others build wax combs with incredible precision. Many spend their lives regulating temperature and airflow by beating their wings, and some risk everything by flying into the outside world in search of food. Then there are the drones, male bees whose sole purpose is to mate with a queen. Once that task is complete, their role in the colony is over. To humanize, this system may seem harsh, but for bees, survival isn't about the individual. It's about the colony. In many ways, a hive behaves less like a collection of insects and more like a single superorganism. And that superorganism has a language of its own. Imagine discovering a field full of flowers several kilometers away. How would you tell thousands of others exactly where to find it? Bees don't use words. They don't draw maps. Instead, they dance. Scientists call it the waggle dance, one of the most extraordinary forms of communication ever discovered in the animal kingdom. A foraging bee returns to the hive and begins moving in a figure-8 pattern while vibrating its body. The angle of the dance tells other bees the direction of the food source relative to the sun. The duration of the movement tells them how far away it is, and the intensity of the dance reveals how valuable the discovery may be. A richer food source inspires a longer and more energetic performance. But here's where things become even more fascinating. The other bees don't blindly follow. They investigate for themselves. If they agree with the scout's assessment, they return and perform the same dance. Gradually, support grows. More scouts join, more dances appear. And over time, a collective decision emerges. No leader issues commands. No bee controls the process. Yet thousands of individuals can coordinate their actions with astonishing accuracy. It's communication, it's cooperation, and it might be closer to voting than anyone expected. One of the most remarkable moments in the life of a honeybee colony happens when the hive needs a new home. Perhaps the old nest has become overcrowded. Perhaps it has been damaged. Whatever the reason, tens of thousands of bees must somehow agree on a new location, and they need to make the right choice. A bad decision could mean the death of the entire colony. So how does a society with no leader solve this problem? The answer begins with a group of scouts. These experienced workers leave the hive and search the surrounding landscape for potential nesting sites. Some discover hollow trees, others find cavities in cliffs or abandoned structures. Each scout returns with its own recommendation. And then, the debate begins. Back inside the hive, scouts perform their waggle dances to advertise the locations they found. A promising site earns a longer and more enthusiastic dance. A mediocre site receives far less attention. Other scouts then visit those locations themselves. If they agree, they return and support that site with dances of their own. If they disagree, support fades away. Slowly, one location begins to gather more and more attention. More dancers, more supporters, more momentum. Until eventually, the colony reaches a consensus. No queen makes the decision. No bee commands the others. The hive simply arrives at the best answer through thousands of tiny interactions. To some scientists, this process resembles a primitive form of democracy. Not because bees think like humans, but because a large group can make intelligent decisions without centralized control. And somehow it works, again and again, generation after generation. Yet communication and cooperation are only part of the story. Because bees can do things that scientists once thought insects should never be capable of doing. For a long time, people assumed that insects were little more than living machines, tiny creatures running on instinct alone. But honeybees keep challenging that assumption. In one surprising experiment, researchers trained bees to recognize human faces. At first, that sounds impossible. After all, bees don't naturally encounter human faces in the wild. Yet scientists discovered that bees could learn visual patterns and remember them later. Over time, they became surprisingly accurate at telling different faces apart. Their brains are incredibly small, yet they can solve problems that seem far beyond what such a tiny nervous system should be capable of handling. And that's not the only surprise. In parts of Asia, honeybee colonies face attacks from giant hornets, predators powerful enough to devastate an entire hive. To defend themselves, some honeybees have developed an unusual strategy. They collect animal dung, then carefully spread it around the entrance of their nest. The result is a kind of chemical barrier. Studies have shown that giant hornets spend less time investigating hives marked with these spots than hives with clean entrances. In other words, bees are using materials from their environment as defensive tools. Tool use is considered one of the hallmarks of intelligence. Yet here it is, appearing inside a colony of insects. But life inside the hive isn't always peaceful. When resources become scarce, survival takes priority over everything else. Worker bees may remove and consume larvae. Eggs can be sacrificed. Even members of their own colony may become a source of nutrients during extreme shortages. To us, it seems brutal. To the hive, it's simply survival. Every decision is made for one purpose: keeping the colony alive. Because for bees, the colony itself is what truly matters. For thousands of years, humans have been fascinated by honey. Ancient people risked dangerous climbs to reach wild hives hidden in cliffs and caves. Honey was one of the rarest sweet foods available in the natural world. It became food, medicine, and even a symbol of wealth in many cultures. Today, scientists continue studying honey for its natural antibacterial properties and potential medical uses. But honey may not be the most important thing bees give us. The real gift is something most people never notice: pollination. Every day, countless bees move from flower to flower, carrying tiny grains of pollen. A simple act, yet one with enormous consequences. Many plants depend on pollinators to reproduce. Entire ecosystems rely on these invisible connections. Forests, grasslands, farms, gardens, all supported by the work of creatures weighing less than a paperclip. Yet despite their importance, bee populations around the world face growing challenges: habitat loss, pesticides, parasites, disease, and a rapidly changing climate. In some regions, bee populations have declined dramatically over the last few decades. For creatures that help support so much life, their future has become increasingly uncertain. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If bees disappeared, what would happen to the world they help maintain? When most people think about bees, they think about honey, or perhaps the painful sting they hope to avoid. But the deeper you look, the more extraordinary these insects become. Inside every hive exists a society built on communication, cooperation, and sacrifice. A society capable of solving problems, sharing information, defending itself, and making collective decisions. All without a king, without a government, without a single mind directing the whole system. Perhaps the most incredible thing about honeybees isn't that they produce honey. It's that millions of years of evolution transformed tiny insects into one of nature's most successful civilizations. A civilization hidden in plain sight, and one that has been quietly helping hold our world together all along. This has been Mysteries of Nature. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden stories behind Earth's most extraordinary creatures, subscribe and join us for the next mystery.